James chapter 5, verse 10, reading from the King James Bible. Take my brethren, the prophets, who have spoken in the name of the Lord, for an example of suffering affliction and of patience. Now let's look at this in the ESV. Quote, as an example of suffering and patience, brothers, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. Unquote. And let's look at Young's literal translation. Quote, an example take ye of the suffering of evil, my brethren, and of the patience, the prophets who did speak in the name of the Lord. Unquote. Now, let's go ahead and parse out James chapter 5, verse 10 from the Greek. Take. Let's look at take. Take is written in the second aorist tense. So basically, as the first aorist, just different spelling. That means that it's looking at the action more so than the time of past, present, or future. It's active voice, so it means it's talking about you. And it's an imperative mood, which corresponds to the English, which expresses a command to the hearer to perform a certain action by the order and the authority of the one that's commanding this. So you are to take. Now, continuing. Take my brethren, the prophets, who have spoken in the name of the Lord for an example. Now, all those phrases, have spoken in the name of the Lord for an example. They are all common phrases that are written in the Greek New Testament. Now let's take a look at have spoken. That again is written in the aorist tense, so that means that it is characterized by the emphasis of the punctual action, irregardless of the time status of past, present, or future. It's an active voice, so it represents the subject as the doer or the performer of the action, and it's an indicative mood, which is a simple stating of the fact. So, have spoken in the name of the Lord for an example of suffering affliction. Now I looked up of suffering affliction, and James only uses it one time. But I think because of the prosperity gospel cult that's going around, let's take a look and see what that translates as far as defines from the Greek what it means. It means suffering evil, afflicted. Properly, the suffering of evil. As an example, trouble, distress, affliction. So that ends the definition of this Greek word. And let's go continue on. And of patience. Now, patience is still a common phrase. So this is pretty common. He's using an example in the Greek of something that is a pretty common phrases, nothing that stands out except for that we are given an order to take this and to do it. And that's pretty much it on this one. So let's go ahead and wrap up the Greek parsing of this verse. Now, let's look at John Gill, James chapter 5, verse 10. Quote, take my brethren, the prophets, who have spoken in the name of the Lord. Unquote. Men who have been highly honored of God, with a gift of prophesying or foretelling things to come, to whom God revealed his secrets, doing nothing without acquainting them with it, and who were sent forth by him and prophesied in his name what were made known unto them. And yet, though these were his favorites, they suffered much, as cruel mockings, scourgings, imprisonment, famine, nakedness, and death in various shapes, some being stoned, others being sawn asunder, and others killed by the sword, all which they endured with incredible patience, and therefore the apostle proposes them to be taken. Quote, for an example, suffering, affliction, and of patience. Unquote. Their afflictions were many and great, and yet they were very patient under them, and through faith and patience they went through them, and now inherit the promises, and so are a very proper example and pattern of New Testament saints to follow and copy after. This ends John Gill's commentary on James chapter 5, verse 10.